This conference will now be recorded. This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, let's get started. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Good morning, guys. My name is Vijay. Uh, I will be the trainer for this module, which is Microsoft Azure Administration. Uh, so, a little bit about this course before we jump into the actual demonstration. This course is, as I said, is purely an administration course. Which means it covers the parts of or the areas that which will enable you to uh, kind of understand and perform the activities that whatever an administrator when it comes to the Azure comes into picture. Okay, so that is one. Number two, if you are planning for an architect role, or if you're already an architect and you're planning for AZ 300, which is Azure Architect Certification, uh, though you are a developer, you are expected to understand how things work in the administration world. Otherwise, you will not be able to provide a solution, when you are architecting your requirement, right? So, as a, to kind of say what I'm trying to express here is you need an Azure administration knowledge when you are even going for architect level of role or certification or whatever, right? And this module that whatever we are going to discuss will help you in preparation and understanding in detail about AZ 103, right, which is your Azure administration module. Okay, now a little bit about myself. As I said, my name is Vijay. I got around 14 years of experience in the administration side. Which means that I was managing server administration, and then I moved to a Citrix admin. Now I'm working as an Azure and a Citrix architect for one of the company, right? So working as a solution architect, right? That little bit about myself. So without waiting further, let's get into the business, right? So what are we going to look at? What are those things that which we are going to cover as a part of today's around 1 hour 15 minutes or so? Um, Basics of, again, this is a demonstration. Don't expect too much out of this, but you will be covered with few areas where we'll be discussing about Azure, and we'll be discussing about basics of cloud computing. So that's what is planned for today's demonstration. So this is the agenda. So we'll discuss about basics, what cloud is, and what are the types of cloud is, what are the services you have, and then we'll jump into the Azure itself. We'll try to understand little history of Azure, and then we'll try to understand regions, geographies, and zones, and try to understand services and marketplace, and then virtual machines. And if time permits, we'll see a small lab on how do we provision a virtual machine, and then we'll discuss what are we going to cover as a part of this entire course and how we are going to manage the lab, right? So this is what we are going to discuss in next 1 hour. If you have any questions, please hold. We'll pause in between and take the questions so that it won't interrupt our discussion. Okay, so that let us agree to that. Okay, so what is a cloud? So this is a buzzword these days, right? So what a cloud is. Now, is it something that which it has been started or it is being used widely these days? I can say no. The similar solution we have been using for quite some time, right? So to quote an example, your Google Drive, right? So when you go and subscribe yourself to Google, so you will get a free subscription or free storage space there, right? And that storage space is available over the internet, and which gives around 30 GB, if I'm not wrong, 22, I think 30 GB, and that you can go and expand whenever you need it, which means that you are expanding your storage which is available on the internet. And where is the storage device located? It is located in the premises of your Google, right, in their data center. So what I'm trying to say here is the similar solutions we have been using for quite some time, but they evolved over the time and then got into the infrastructure or platform or software or whatsoever, right? So what exactly cloud means? What is the definition of cloud? How do we define cloud? Now, these are few definitions that which we could able to pick from different sources. One is from Wikipedia and the other one is from Azure portal and then the Amazon Web Services portal. Now, what do they say? Now, the gist of all these definitions or the summary of all these definitions is usage of resources, they say it. Now, what are those resources you are going to use? Servers, right? Applications, network components, or it can be, you know, the storage devices. Now, all these things that whatever we call them as resources, you will be using over the internet or some network, it could be public or private. And all these resources that whatever you use are reside or will reside in the data center of your service provider. Now, when we say about service provider here means it can be Google, it can be AWS, Amazon Web Services, or Microsoft Azure, Alibaba, or some third party. Now, it is not just having these resources in their data center and provide us access to them. It should also have a quality of scalability. We'll discuss those things in next subsequent slides, but you should be able to scale up and scale down those resources as per your business requirement. It's not only the scaling up and scaling down, but it also should enable you when it comes to the cost perspective, it should also give you ability to pay as you go or as you use. So to summarize what a cloud computing is, it's usage of resources which reside in the service provider data center, which and these resources or the resources that which you use will has got a quality of scalability and then pay as you go or whatsoever. And there are some other characteristics like security and other stuff which we'll be discussing in our subsequent slides, but this is what a cloud computing is. Okay, right. Now, what are those characteristics a cloud should have? Right, so we just discussed the definition of cloud, but what are those characteristics that any cloud should have? Now, these are certain characteristics that which NIST will say that, you know, these are few basic things that which any cloud should have. Now, let us try to understand these characteristics. The first one is on-demand self-service. So what it means is you should be able to provision and manage the resources on your own. You are not going to rely on somebody else to provision a resource for you. If you are part of right roles, if you are provided enough permissions, you should be able to do it on your own. And you are not waiting for that for days or weeks or whatsoever when compared to a traditional data center model, right? So where you used to wait for your environment to set up, somebody has to order hardware, then somebody has to rack, stack, and patch, install operating system, and then your turn will come to install the application and go for the production environment. So that wait time and dependency on multiple teams is reduced with a characteristic called as on demand self-service. Now, how do I attain this future? How can I do a self-service? Now, for that, your service provider has to provide you some tools, some interfaces, right? Most of the cloud service providers, the top guys or even a small vendor will provide you a portal with which you can manage. It's not only just a portal, you will also be provided with some command line interfaces, which we will be discussing what are those things we have for Azure. You will also be provided with software development kits, Azure SDKs, so that you can use some other programming language like Python or Ruby or whatsoever, wherever you are comfortable with. So on-demand self-service will help you to provision your resources on your own and get away from the dependency of multiple teams, and it helps you in delivering the services without wait time. So that is on-demand self-service. Now the second one is measured service. Now we were just discussing when we were discussing about the definition of the cloud, right? So we said that it is pay as you go, or any resource that which you are using will be measured, how much time you used, how much quantity of the resources you used, and based on that you will be charged. Of course, there are some other models like upfront cost and other stuff where you will be paying less amount to the Azure when it comes to the billing, but that's up to your choice whether you want to go with pre-committed resource utilization where the overall expense will be less, but you can also go with pay as you go. So what we need to understand is if today I'm using a virtual machine of xxx GB of RAM and x number of cores, then I will be only charged for what I am using. Versus in your traditional data center model, you used to go and procure and then pay things for your hardware or whatsoever, and if you're done, it still lies in one of the corner of your data center without being used, right? So that's the advantage of cloud. The third characteristic of cloud that what you see here is rapid elasticity. Now this is where when the other point during our definition discussion, scalability, we were discussing. Now elasticity means increase of the resources or decrease of the resources. So you can increase the amount of RAM on your virtual machine as per your requirement. You can add additional cores to your machines. You can go and increase the IOs of your storage. Based on your requirement, you go and tweak your configuration, change your configuration. That's what a rapid elasticity will allow you to scale up and scale down your environment. When we say about scale up, adding additional resources to the existing resource itself, that is called as scaling up, right? So you are increasing the resources. That's called as vertical scaling. It's not only scale up, which means that increasing the additional resources on the servers or whatsoever you are using, but you can also increase the number of servers in a pool, which means if you have a web cluster, today your requirement might be 5 web servers as a part of cluster, tomorrow it might be 10. You can go and increase the additional number of servers to the existing pool. So this we call it as horizontal scaling, right? So vertical scaling is increasing the resources on the same server, right? Whereas please go on mute, guys, if you are not speaking.
I get up in the morning to do this job I don't even like, and I'm doing it just for the money, and it's not gonna.
Guys, please go on mute. I think Dell, please go on mute. Thank you. Right. Sorry for that. So rapid elasticity will help you both with horizontal and vertical scaling. It's not only scale up, you can also scale down. It's not only scale out, you can also scale in. So that is rapid elasticity. Now the resource pooling is another characteristic. What does it mean? You have a pool of resources in the underlying below your cloud stack, they have a group of huge resource pool, which means that you will not get out of the resources. That is one. And these resource pool will be shared by multiple customers of Azure with an isolation or division between them, so that one resource of one customer will not be accessible by the other resource of other customers. That level of isolation is there. Abstraction, we can call it as, right? So that is the advantage of resource pooling. And the last one is broad network access, where you go and look at the network feasibility, right? Interconnectivity between the networks. Now, all the regions wherever your data centers of the customers are located or service provider are located, they are connected with high speed network, which means that low latency and high speed. And you can integrate your on premises, which means that your data center, to these cloud environment with ease without any issues, right? So any cloud that which you talk or take, they will have these characteristics. Okay, so we understood what is cloud, the definition of the cloud, and we understood what are the characteristics of the clouds, right? Let us go a little bit ahead and try to understand what are the benefits that which you reap out of the cloud model. If you as an organization say that you want to adopt a cloud first model, where you may want to move your on-premises workload to the cloud, then what are those benefits you as an organization will get? Let us quickly try to understand at a very high level. Okay, so first one is cost. Now when we talk about cost, we can divide the cost into two parts, right? So one is your capital expense, and the second one is your operational expense. Now we'll try to understand how do we reduce the capital expense, how cloud is benefiting in reduction of capital expenses. So in the capital expense, you go and purchase things, right? So if you have a new project, you have to procure the servers, storage devices, network devices, backup solutions, and all those things around that. You will be investing in that. In the traditional data center model, you have this to a maximum extent, right? And there's a wait time as well, which we will be discussing in a while. But the cost of this procuring the hardware and other stuff is reduced, or maybe sometimes zero, if you go to the cloud. Now, it's not only the capital expense, the operational expense, which means that the day-to-day maintenance and management of your infrastructure, there will be a reduction in the overall cost when we talk about the cloud computing management versus on-premises management. And how it is reduced, we'll be discussing in our subsequent slides, but there is a reduction in the cost perspective, which means that benefit in the cost. Speed, productivity, and performance. The speed of the resources that which you get very high-end compute servers if you want. If you want a GPU enabled servers, you get them. So the resources that what you get is of very high performance. Based of your requirement, you can go and select the resources. You have something called as SKUs, stock keeping units, where you have multiple SKUs of multiple sizes. Based on your requirement, you can go and deploy the resource of the size that whatever you are required. The productivity is the wait time, right? As we said in the earlier slide, on-demand self-service, right? Which means that reduction in the wait time, which means that maximum productivity and better performance of the resources that whatever you have on the cloud. Global scale is another important aspect. Presence of the service provider data centers across different geographical locations will allow you to deploy the resources wherever you want in the world. So if you are expanding your business from India to US, then you can go and deploy the resources with ease without any whatever you call it as a dependency or whatsoever. So when you compare this deployment with the traditional data center world, if you are kind of go and want to deploy a environment in US, then you have to hire somebody there, and then you have to talk about or think about your real estate, data center, power, so much around that, right? So that's where you are reducing the dependencies and you can get the things done with ease. And again, in turn, you are complying to the regulatory requirements of that particular region, right? So that's what you're going to get out of global scale. Security. This security here, it means that the cloud stack security, or the resources under the cloud stack, we can call it as. But anything about that, you are still responsible, which means if you are deploying a operating system, or if you are putting some files and folders in a share, you are still responsible for the security. But the underlying security below the cloud stack is cleared by top governing bodies or security governing bodies, right? So these are the benefits that which you get out of cloud computing when you adopt cloud, right? Then who is competing with whom in this world, right? AWS, major market shareholder, right? Then Azure, GCP, Alibaba, IBM, and HP, and other vendors. So the major market captures, you can call it as AWS, Azure, and then GCP and Alibaba, right? So what are the different types of clouds we have? I think you guys might already have an understanding on this, but let us quickly discuss at a very high level. So you can categorize your cloud infrastructure into 3 different types. Now one is private, second one is public, and third one is hybrid. Now in the public cloud, the resources that whatever you are going to use on the cloud will be available in the service provider data center, and these resources, which means that the underlying hardware and the maintenance of that and availability of those resources and all those things is managed by your service provider itself, in a sense Microsoft Azure or AWS or GCP or whoever, right? So in the public cloud infrastructure, the resources are available and owned by the service provider in their data centers, right? That's what a public cloud is. In the private cloud, you as an organization is still responsible for management of the hardware, management of the network, and high availability of the resources and so on. So what you are doing is you are deploying a cloud stack on top of your own hardware environment, and then you use that as a private cloud, which means there is not much difference between your traditional data center model and a private cloud if you as organization still manage the infrastructure of the private cloud. And the last one is the hybrid cloud, which means that if you have presence in both private and public cloud, then you are called as hybrid cloud, right? So 3 types of cloud. Now the resources that what we use on the cloud, we use them as services. So if you are using a server, then we call it as infrastructure as service. If you're using an application, you can call it as platform as service. And if you use an application which is readily available, no configuration needed, and just go and use straight away, software as an application, software as service, sorry. So you can divide the cloud services into multiple categories. Now what is a cloud service? Any service that which you use on cloud, can be a server, can be a storage, can be a network, whatsoever. They can categorized, or they can be categorized into multiple things. Now the table that what we are seeing here lists top 3 services. There are other services as well, but we'll talk about top 3 services, and we compare them with our traditional data center model. So if you look at the traditional services here, and the stack and the entire stack, right from the network, storage, physical servers, and so on, all these things you as an organization will manage and maintain or take care that they are available. That is a traditional model, data center model. Now, if you as an organization adopt cloud, if you adopt one of these services, there are certain layers which you can get rid of when it comes to the management and maintenance. It depends on what service you are using will help you to get rid of certain layers. So that's where when we were discussing about cost, we were discussing about what you call it as operational cost as well, right? Now here, based on the service that which you go and select, the cost will vary. Maintenance cost or operational cost will change, which means less headache for you as an organization. Let us discuss these things. The first one is infrastructure as service. So in the infrastructure as service, you go and build the operating system on top of your cloud stack. So what is your responsibility? Building of the operating system, or deploying of the operating system, installation of the application on top of it, and the management of the application runtime and data. So which means that it is almost equal to your traditional data center model. The only difference is you are getting rid of this layer. So what are the layers that which you are not managing? You are not managing the physical servers on which your operating system resides. You are not managing the network to which these physical servers are connected, and you are not managing the storage where your data or the operating system disks will reside. And you are not managing the hypervisor which sits on top of your physical hardware. In Azure world, it is Hyper-V. You are not managing that. So in your traditional data center model, you were managing this part. If your physical server down, you have to call your vendor and get him to fix the problem. If the physical disk on your one of the server goes down, you have to get it replaced. The firmware updates of your hardware devices, you are still responsible in the traditional data center model. If your storage is running out of space, you have to get additional disks and insert it or expand your storage solution. And look at the network high availability and so on. The hypervisor patching and hardening and all those things. So in infrastructure as service, you are getting rid of all these layers. What you are responsible for is operating system and anything that which resides on top of it, which means you are responsible for the performance of the operating system. You are responsible for the performance of your application, hardening of the operating system and application, high availability of your operating system and application. All these things you are responsible for. However, there is a reduction in the operational cost. Where and why? Because you are getting rid of these very important layers, which involves a lot of cost when it comes to the capital expense, and it involves a lot of cost when it comes to the operational expenses. That is infrastructure as service. Now you can see the top one, managed by organization, or the one you managed by the service provider, is the one that what your service provider will manage. Now, so what are those things that which will be part of infrastructure as service? Anything related to machine server creation or migration of server from on-premises to cloud as is, right? So the advantage what you have here is you will have full control of the operating system and then application and so on, which will not be there in our subsequent services that what we are going to discuss. So that is infrastructure as service. Now the second one is platform as service. In platform as service, if you look at the stack managed by service provider, your operating system and the middleware or runtime are still managed and maintained by your service provider itself. Which means if I as a administrator want to deploy, I'll quote an example here. Okay, I want to deploy a database service. Let us say that SQL service. Now you have two solutions here. Adopt infrastructure as service model, install operating system, install SQL Server on top of it, and then configure it. That is one way of doing it. That's what your infrastructure as service does. Now, what if you get the SQL service application itself from the vendor, from your service provider? So you're getting rid of the operating system management and the SQL Server application management and other stuff. That's what is a platform as service is. So your service provider gives you the platform, in our case a SQL Server, where you can just go and use it, which means within few minutes you can go and create your databases and so on, whatever you are in need of. So you need not have to worry about the operating system on which your SQL resides, and high availability, in fact. So they'll make sure that your application is available 24/7 because they have that level of clustering under the underlying cloud stack. And you not have to worry about, okay, I need to go and update my SQL with the latest patch or latest service pack or whatsoever. But what you are responsible here in platform as service is your data, which means that your database, in the example that what I'm quoting, and the configuration management of that particular service, that whatever you're using. It can be a database service, it can be an application service or whatsoever. So you have a readily available platform which you are using, and you are getting rid of almost the entire stack except 2 layers. That is your platform as service. Now the advantage here that what you see is getting rid of these layers, but you will have very less control on the application that whatever you are using. And the advantage what you get, you will be using the latest application version, right? So those are few advantages that which you get when you use the platform as service. The last one is software as service. In this service, you use a software. So you need not have to manage anything. So simple example is Office 365 or the GoToMeeting that what we are using right now. So I just go and use that application. I did not have to manage anything. I subscribe and use it. That's all. That is software as service. So your cloud services are categorized into your cloud infrastructure or resources that what you use can be categorized into services based on how they are being used. Now based on your requirement, you need to take a call, right? Now you can, whether you want to use infrastructure as service or platform as service is up to you, but there are services that which are available in platform which can be managed easily, and that you can do it using infrastructure as service as well, right? That's what your different cloud services are. Okay, so these are the basic things that what I want to just take you through when it comes to the cloud computing, right? So let us quickly get into the Azure part itself. Now what is Azure? It's a cloud service, and any cloud service, the characteristics that whatever we discussed few minutes back should also be applicable for this particular cloud service called as Azure. That's what you say. If this definition is picked from Microsoft website, they say that it's an ever expanding set of cloud services. Set of cloud services in the sense they have around 100 plus services which you can go and use it. And freedom to build, which means that on-demand self-service, manage and deploy applications on massive global scales, which means that scalability and global presence, network with favorite tools and frameworks, right? So this is what the definition of Azure is. We discussed all these things. Now little history, we'll try to get into the Azure itself little deeper. So they started in the year 2010. It was called as Windows Azure, and of course that was renamed as Microsoft Azure in 2014. Now they have huge number of data centers when compared to their, what do you call it, as competitors. Let us try to go and look at what are those data centers where their presence is. Okay, so let us quickly go to that. Azure infrastructure. right? Okay, so these are the different regions across the world the Azure presence is. Now they say that they have presence in 140 countries, and that's what this diagram shows, or this map, that whatever we are seeing. So they presence, they categorized into something called as geographies, regions, and zones. We'll try to quickly understand what they are, which is very important for us going forward to when you deploy the resources. So geographies is nothing but, they call it as Americas, Europe, Asia Pacific, Africa, and Middle East. So they divide their entire infrastructure into different geographies, and each geography will have multiple regions. So in America's geography, that whatever you are seeing here, you see multiple regions. West US, Central US, West US 2, and so on, so on, so on. So geography is a group of regions, and each region will have data centers, or one or more data centers, right? So a region is a set of data centers with a latency defined parameter and connected with high performance or low latency network, right? So a geography region. Now if you look at this map, you'll see the circle one is the available region, where are the dot circles, which means that that region is still in the commissioning phase, which means that they are still working on the data centers, right? So Norway East and I think Norway West, work in progress, which means that they are not in production, but the ones that whatever you see, the full circle with color filled, is an available region. Now you also see something called as availability zones, right? In this circle, you see a diamond symbol, right? In few of the regions or locations, not all the regions has got these diamond symbols, right? So only few of them here and there, right? Now what is this availability zone? Now each region, if you look at this diagram here, this box, right? Each region, as I said, will have data centers. And those data centers can be further categorized into something called as availability zones. Now availability zone is nothing but a group of data centers within the region, and each data center is independent of the other, which means each data center will have its own power, will have its own cooling, will have its own, what do you call it, as network. So what is the advantage of that? So this allows you, or this helps you with a high availability solution when it comes to the resource deployment within the same region. So a region may or may not have an availability zone. There are few regions where you see in West US 2 you have an availability zone, or Central US you have availability zone, East US and East US 2 you have availability zones. When we talk about the regions that what you have here in India, they don't have availability zones, which means that they have data centers, but they don't have availability zones, which means that one or more data centers with independent power and cooling. Then the question arises then, okay, so high availability you are talking, if I don't have availability zones, then if I want to deploy a resource in a region where I don't have zones, then how do we attain high availability? There are some other solutions which we will be discussing in our course when it comes to the disaster recovery and high availability that can be attained without even zones as well. So look at the when you look at this entire categorization, so you can say at like a region can have a group of data centers that can be categorized into availability zones, right? So availability zones, regions, geographies. Okay, so let us try to understand little more on these things. Okay, So let us quickly get into Azure geographies. Now this is what I was saying. So within the Americas, which is a geography, you have these regions. And of course, Brazil is also part of your Americas. Canada and Azure government, they have something, and then United States. And similarly in Europe, they have these regions, right? And then Asia Pacific, which they have Asia Pacific it as a region, then Australia, China, India, Japan, and Korea. And then Middle East and Africa. They combined Africa and Middle East into one geographical location, right? Okay, so where these data centers are located? Now in Americas, these are the regions, right? So this central US data center is located in a location called as Iowa, and East US too in a location called Virginia, and so on. You can see the locations as well. Now if you go to Asia Pacific, if you look at India, South India, they are in Chennai, Mumbai, and Pune, central India. So South, Central, and West India, right? So you can look at the locations as well. Now another important thing is products by region. Now one thing that what we need to understand as an administrators, not every service or every product which is available within the Azure is available in every region or every location. That's the reason you may have to go and look at, if you are looking for a specific service, go and look at whether it is available in the region that which you want to deploy. That's where you can go and search for the product here, and you can go and select which region you want to look into it. Okay, so, but where do I find what are the products or services that which are available within Azure? There is something called as Azure Marketplace. Okay, so Azure Marketplace. So this Azure Marketplace will help you to go and look at what are the apps or the services which are available within the Azure, right? So you can go and look at for a specific service that whatever you are looking for or to deploy here in this particular portal. Of course, if you click on browse all apps, then you can see more categorized section within the web page, sections within this web page. So if you want to look at for the database services, then you go and click for the database. Then you see different types of databases. Again, you can go and look at relational databases, NoSQL databases, and so on. Or if you want to deploy compute, now what are the different operating systems that which are available? What are the different infrastructures that which you can deploy? And you can search here, right, based on your requirement. So Azure Marketplace is a single portal that which will help you to understand what are the services or the applications that which are available within Azure, or that which you can use as a customer in the Azure environment, right? This is your marketplace, very important thing. Okay, so we understood what are the regions and how do we go and look at the products by region, and we also seen how do I understand or know what are the different products available, but how do I deploy these resources? I want to go and deploy, let us say that my requirement is a Windows machine, and I want to deploy a Windows operating system. I want to deploy a Windows 2012 operating system. Then what are the, and how do I do that? What are the different ways I can do it? Now, when we were discussing about on-demand self-service, we discussed that the service provider will provide you with some tools which will enable you to use the services. Now, Azure provides you a portal, and Azure provides you a command line interface. So they provide you a portal, and that is portal.azure.com, using which you can deploy the resources within the Azure cloud. Now, if you are a developer or you don't like a GUI interface, then you have PowerShell. If you are a PowerShell guy, use PowerShell. Or if you want to use some other tool, they have something called as Azure CLI, Azure Command Line Interface, which is platform independent, which means that you can go and install this Azure CLI on Linux, Macintosh, and Windows machines as well. There's another command line interface here. So if you want to use CLI, you can rely on PowerShell or Azure CLI for deployment of the resources. Now, apart from this portal and command line interfaces, you can use Visual Studio.NET to deploy the resources as well. You can use Visual Studio.NET to deploy the resources. And you can, if you are a developer and you are you use some other development tools, then you can go and download the SDKs of that respective programming language, and then you can also use those languages like Python, Ruby, or whatsoever to deploy the resources as well. So to deploy any resources on Azure, you use, as I said, this portal. So you will be subscribing yourself to this portal, and once you subscribe yourself, then you use your credentials to log into the portal with your credentials, right? Portal.azure.com. So this, let us say that I want to get into this portal, and this is how you get it. And all the services, all the products that whatever you had seen here in the marketplace are available here in the all services, right? You can see the same categorization that whatever you had seen. So based on your requirement, you can go and select the service or the resource that whatever you want to deploy. Or if you want to use a command line interface, go and use PowerShell or Azure CLI or some programming language which you can use to deploy the things, right? So that's what your Azure portal is. Okay, so for this course, how am I going to use the lab, right? So you will be on your own, which means that you subscribe yourself to the Azure portal or Azure cloud. So when you subscribe yourself to the Azure cloud, you get 30 days trial. And within these 30 days, you will be able to use an amount of 13,300 rupees INR. So when I subscribe myself to a trial Azure service, what I get is I get a credit into my wallet, a worth of 13,000 rupees. And that 13,000 rupees I can spend up to 30 days. So if you finish that 13,300 rupees before 30 days, you are done with the available funds, which means that you cannot deploy additional resources. Or even 30 days you are left with some amount in your wallet within the Azure portal, then you will not be able to use after 30 days, which means that they will get lapsed. So all you need to do is, which I will be showing you on Monday, how do you subscribe to the free trial subscription, but you have this option where you can go and use the services for 30 days, and that's how you will be working on your labs. Now, what are those things that which are needed for me to go and subscribe myself for free trial subscription? You need a credit card. Now, this credit card will be used, just for the validation purpose. No charges until and unless you convert that into pay as you go. Right? So, a credit card is needed for a trial subscription, and you also need some identification, unique identification, and then you need a mobile number and email. Now these are the things that which are needed for a free trial subscription. So once you subscribe yourself, then you can use lab for 30 days without any interruptions. And I will show how best we can manage that with less cost and so on, that we will be discussing anyway in our first discussion on Monday. But these are the things that which are needed for the lab. So for lab, you will be on your own and you will be subscribing yourself. Now, the few people will ask what happens after 30 days, even if I want to go and practice. So you either convert this into pay as you go model, your account, and then your amount will get deducted for your credit card on monthly basis. Or if you don't want to do it, go and search for somebody who can help you with another credit card, PAN number, and email address and mobile number. Because these are all unique identifiers. You cannot, if you use it once again, then it will treat it as, okay, he is an existing customer, right? So that's how you can manage the lab. Okay, so let me quickly take you through the course content at a very high level. Give me a minute. Right, so as I said, this course covers your AZ103 when it comes to the certification, but you'll also have that confidence of managing the environment as well once you're done with this course, right? So if you go through this, the first one is cloud computing basics. That's what we were discussing so far, right? So your history of cloud, and then cloud types, benefits of cloud computing, Azure history, services and marketplace, regions and geographies and zones, right? So then we will discuss something called as subscriptions, which is nothing but how do I as an organization and go and subscribe myself to the Azure if I want to move to the cloud model. What are those things needed? What are the different subscription types you have? One of them is that what we are going to use, that is a free trial subscription. Apart from that, what are the other subscriptions you have? What are the advantages that which you get out of what subscription? And how do I manage cost and resources when it comes to the cost management, right? So that is subscriptions and resources. Role-based access control, which means that if your organization got multiple administrative levels, how do I manage access controls? L1 should get very least privileges, or L2 should get least privileges when compared to L4. Now, how do I manage this role-based access control when it comes to the cloud, right? And then your virtual machines. How do I deploy resources like virtual machines, Linux as well as Windows? What are the different settings that which we have? How do I expand the disks on the virtual machines? How do I add additional network interface cards? How do I troubleshoot if my machine is not coming up? And how do I create a custom image? Custom images are the images organization specific, right? We call it as templates or golden images or whatsoever. In the VMware world or your traditional data center world, you used to create a golden images with pre-deployed softwares as per your organization requirement. How do I do that in Azure? So these are few topics that which we cover in the virtual machines. Then we switch to a topic called as networking. Again, networking is a very huge concept in Azure, which has got a weightage up to 30% in your AZ103, and other categories are around 20 to 25%, but networking is 30% when it comes to the questions. So in Azure, how do we divide my entire Azure cloud environment into something called as virtual networks or subnets? How do I integrate networks using a concept called as peering? How do I restrict traffic flow into the Azure? By setting up some rules like your firewall rules. We call them as NSGs or network security groups. And how do I create a static routes? Right. So if you want to override the default routes that whatever Azure provides, then how do I create a static routes? And then we discuss about Azure DNS. Then we again switch back to the virtual machines itself, where we will discuss about high availability of your virtual machines. And we have high availability solutions by using something called as fault and update domains, which will help you in managing the infrastructure. Better way, if the underlying hardware goes bad, your server should not, or your application should not be unavailable, right? So how do I manage those situations? That's what we discuss in the availability sets, where we discuss about fault and update domains. And then you will discuss about virtual machine scalability. We were discussing about horizontal scaling, right? Where you can go and add additional resources to the existing pool of servers. So how do I do an automatic scaling based on the load? If the server's utilization is 90%, which means that CPU utilization on servers is 90%, then I want to add 2 additional servers. Can I do it automatically? Yes, you can do it. You will not have to sit a whole night and monitoring your utilization of the services or servers, then you go and add additional servers. You can do it with automatically that with a solution called as virtual machine scale set, where you can scale the machines automatically, right? That also we will look here. And then again back to your network services, where we'll discuss about load balancer. How do I load balance my backend web services with a front end public or private IP address, right? So that is your load balancing. And then how do I integrate my on premises to the Azure environment, right? So I need a VPN solution or secure connectivity to integrate my data center, which is located on premises, and I should have a secure communication with the cloud environment. So how do I do that? I use a solution here, or we use a solution here called as site-to-site VPN. And these are the two solutions you have for data centers integrations with the cloud. One is site-to-site, the second one is express route. Express route, you will be working with a third-party service provider. That's the reason we'll not be able to show this in practical, but we'll be discussing only theory around that. And then you have some other VPN solution called as point to site, individual machine to the Azure cloud connectivity. That also we'll discuss, right? This is your networking. And then we'll get into a storage services. Within that, we discuss different types of services, service accounts, managed, unmanaged storage, backup and restore of the storage services, and all those things will be covered here. And all those things that whatever we are discussing here will be, lab driven for each and every concept that which we discuss. Everything is associated with what do you call it, as a demonstration with a lab, right? And then the Azure Active Directory, right? So how do I integrate my authentication services, Active Directory domain services to Azure cloud? You have multiple solutions around that. Disaster recovery, which is part of your site recovery, and then migrations. Migrations will take 3 days, where we will be looking at how do we migrate our on-premises VMware environment to the cloud, and then troubleshooting, right? So this is at a very high level. There are subtopics around this, but it's what it is. And this course is around 30 to 40 days with 1 hour class per day, weekdays, no weekend classes, which means that it will take around 35 days to complete this entire course, right? So this is about the course content, and every day we'll be spending 1 hour, and that 1 hour we will be discussing theory, and then we will demonstrate the scenarios, and then you will be practicing them, right? And that labs will be done using PowerShell, using GUI, and then we use ARM templates as well, which we will be discussing, which is very important for us in the real-time production environment. Azure Resource Manager templates, that also will be discussed as a part of this course. Okay, so that's what I have for this demonstration. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and then you can ask. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions. So I can guarantee you that once you are done with this course, you will be on your own. Again, you have to practice, and you have to read. So then you will be kind of at a level as an experienced administrator.
Hi Vijay, this is Sandeep. I have one question.
Yes,
I have one doubt.
yes, Sandeep.
In any relation between Terraform and Packers in Azure, is any differences or any Terraform and
Okay, so
Packers?
Terraform you will use for resource deployment, right? So in here, what we use is we use orchestration solution or a deployment solution called as ARM templates. Okay, so Terraform we are not going to cover. That is part of your DevOps stuff. So we will see how do we deploy resources using ARM templates. We are not going to cover, Terraform. So that is not part of this course. But you will be able to kind of write code using Terraform. Once you understand the resource, how are these resources interrelated? What are the multiple sub resources within a resource which we need to interact, or how they are dependent with each other? All those things you will understand, which will help you to put code. But again, as I said, Terraform will not be discussed. We will be discussing ARM templates in place of Terraform.
Okay, Packers also same thing. Packers.
Packers also no. That those are all not part of admin. They're all part of your DevOps stuff, right? So they will not be covered here.
Okay. Okay.
Any questions from anybody on whatever we discuss? Anything in generic also you can ask. Don't hesitate.
Vijay, Sai Prasad here.
Yes, I.
Yeah, are we using any languages here or only like networking like CLI commands, all these things only?
So we use CLI. We'll use PowerShell Max. Then we'll see Azure CLI in few classes, and we'll see ARM, JSON. Right? We'll use JSON templates. Those are the three things that which we use here. So we are not going to use .NET or Ruby or whatsoever. No. So will use PowerShell. We'll use JSON Max.
Okay, but as you said, like for development purpose, we are going to use Python something else, scripting language and all.
Mhm.
So are we using
Yes.
Python or Python here?
No, we won't use Python. So that you may have to work on your own. But we will help you with the SDKs. How do we deploy those things? But Python will not be discussed. We'll be discussing uh, Azure PowerShell and ARM, which is part of your JSON, right? JSON code. That's what those two things we'll be using here.
Okay, and are we introducing any like some application with example or simple theory or something like this?
Most of the times we will be using web servers for our demonstrations. In the sense, we will be using Windows Web Services for whatever the labs, specifically for load balancing or auto scaling, that whatever we were discussing, right? So those type of situations we use Microsoft IS Web Services to demonstrate, right? So those are few apps that which we will be using.
Okay, okay,
So,
Vijay, thank you. Yeah.
no problem. Yeah, Funny, it seems you have a question.
Yeah, hey, hi, Vijay. Can I deploy this Hyperion components in Azure?
What components?
Hyperion components, these Oracle-based components.
Yeah. You have Oracle services in Azure. Yes, you can do it.
Okay, so you mentioned like we are not taking care of this Python scripting, like so the Azure is providing Python scripts, or that we have to create the Python scripts.
Okay, so I need to check that. There is a repository, a Git repository, where you get JSON templates, PowerShell templates, and Python is also there. I need to check. You have predefined templates which you can go and tweak them. For example, if I want to, most of the times how I do is, if I want to deploy a group of resources, then I go and use the existing template, which has got the entire skeleton and some code which you can go and tweak them and use it. So there are predefined templates which you can use for your requirement. So that level of documentation is available within the Git.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, so if no questions, then I think we'll start from Monday, right? So you can get in touch with the the institute for further details. That's all I have from my side. So Vijaya or Lakshmi, you have anything for these guys? Please communicate.
Hello. Hi, this is Vijay from Career IT Online Trainings. Thank you, Vijay. Thank you for your demo. And small information from my end. Batch will start from Monday onwards. Timing would be 7 to 8 a.m. IST. And the other details I'll be sending by mail. Please check your mails for further details. Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys. Thanks for joining. I wish you have a great day ahead and good night as well, those who are in US. Thank you. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Vijay.